Hello and welcome to PRSay. This is the official podcast for the Houston chapter of the Public Relations Society of America. And I'm your host, Veronica V. Sopher, and I have the distinct honor of introducing you to some of our fantastic members here in the Houston chapter. Because here at PRSay, we are committed to making sure that our members grow in their network and they can find opportunities and projects to collaborate and really share in the great space that we work in. So I'm pleased to bring to you another great guest. Before we bring him on there, I want to make sure that I remind you to hit subscribe. If you are listening on the podcast, we want you to download all the episodes of PRSay so you can hear from all of our members and find out where there might be a good connection for you. And if you are watching on Facebook or YouTube, drop us some comments and my guest and I will be sure to connect. So we'll go ahead and bring on our guest today. We have Lee Vela joining us. Welcome so much.
Hi, how are you this afternoon?
I'm great. Thanks. Now, did I say your name correctly?
Vela.
Vela. Okay.
Yes.
So I was going back and forth and I practiced a little
That's
bit.
okay. That's
Forgot
okay.
to ask Lee, but thank
Just
you
don't
so
call
much.
me late for supper.
That's right. That's kind of my saying too. So tell us a little bit about where you're at and where you got started in PR.
Well, actually, Veronica, this is my 50th year in the PR business.
Oh, wow.
So thank
Congratulations.
you. I graduated in 1973 from East Texas State University with a degree in journalism, emphasis in PR and advertising. And so I started working in the Dallas market for a few years and then came back to Houston where, the best thing to come out of Dallas is the road to Houston. So that's what I tell people all the time. But at any rate, so I came here, worked for a couple of agencies, had my own agency for a while, and then worked for the Port of Houston Authority for 7 years, which was interesting and international and all that. So it was all really good. And then have been with Clear Channel and its predecessors since 1991.
Wow.
So a
Okay.
long time.
Yeah, a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And what I love about public affairs is it melds so many of the skills that you
It
have that you
does.
learn. Yeah,
It
that you learn
does.
as a journalism student. So tell us a little bit about how you put all that together.
Well, it's interesting because that you say that because I tell people all the time about public affairs and how using good PR techniques and blending them with your public affairs goals really makes a big difference. In a lot of times, people are just in one silo or the other. They're in public affairs or they're in PR, and really there is a blending that can help you accomplish what your goals are. And I use that all the time. For instance, we do a lot of press activities for Clear Channel. I'm one of the few in the company that does a lot of these things. But the purpose of the press events is not just to uh, garner earned media. It's also to involve and influence leaders in the community as well.
Hmm.
So if we are, and we're very legislative driven because we're highly regulated in this
Hmm.
industry.
Hmm.
And so if I can involve a city council person or a elected official in some way with the projects that we're doing, and they benefit from getting earned media, we get earned media, we show the benefits of what we do, and hopefully it helps when we have issues that come up within that legislative body.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. So it's a little bit of legislative affairs plus traditional media pitching, plus probably some community engagement. I mean,
Exactly.
it's all
Exactly.
wrapped up in that big public affairs
Yes.
bubble.
Yes.
Yeah.
For instance, I've been busy building out our digital footprint because we're one of the last big cities in the nation without this technology on our streets. So digital billboards have been it's a little bit difficult because you've got to go to every city and negotiate with each city and that sort of thing to do it. And we don't have them in Houston yet, but we do have them in the surrounding areas. So when I had left Clear Channel for a couple of years and went over to HISD for a couple of years. I won't talk about that.
I
At any
understand.
rate,
I
yeah.
understand.
But when I came back, we had two digital units that I worked on before I came back, and now we have 44. and this has been about a 12-year swath. So one of the things that we looked at is to, okay, can we do to illustrate the public benefit of digital technology on our streets? And so we looked around and said, okay, we can work with the Homeland Security offices throughout the area. And we developed Clear Channel. I developed the Gulf Coast Emergency Communications Network. So we have worked very hard for a number of years now to get the protocols in place for when and if we have, not a matter of if, it's when we have another storm, either a natural disaster or a man-made disaster,
Mhm, mhm,
that we can make our technology available at no cost
mhm,
to those governmental entities that need to educate and get and uh, start a communication with the public.
mhm.
So that has won a number of awards, one from PRSA, as a matter of fact. But it also helps us to illustrate why these cities need this technology.
Right, right.
And
Yeah.
so that in an essence affects the bottom line,
Mhm.
because the more we can build out our footprint, the more we can utilize that product for the company.
Mhm. Right. And then also that customer, I don't know if it's customer, but that community relations and, all of that
There's
just
nothing
ties.
like it. Exactly. The
Yeah.
CSR benefit of this is huge. For instance, today we kicked off countdown to hurricane season with a virtual clock on our digital billboards that starts first part for May 1 to June 1st. June 1st, it then switches to a general preparedness message, and we do that county by county by county. So we're doing that in 5 counties now, and it's tremendously successful because it's, again, a public benefit.
Mhm.
Um, but there are also so many other things that we can do. For instance, we did a project last year with Make a Wish Foundation,
Mm.
and the this little girl who was a 10-year-old cancer patient. Her wish was to for people to see her artwork. So when Make a Wish came to me and they just wanted to, she was going to have a gallery show, and so they said, they just wanted to promote the show, and I said, well, wait a minute, why don't we put her artwork up on the billboards as well? And so when we did that, we designed some boards, showcased her and the artwork, and showcased the exhibit, and we had a press conference with her, and they didn't tell her about it. It was a surprise. So they walked her out with her back to where the billboard was, and when they turned her around, it was just like your heart
Oh,
melted. I mean, it's just I've been doing this for a long time, and I just teared up. I mean,
yeah.
it was just absolutely amazing. She was so happy and surprised, and it was a wonderful. It was one of those things that's a good thing to do because it garnered a lot of activities, but it's the right thing to do
It's
as
the
well.
right thing. Yeah. Yeah, it's
You
that
know.
corporate responsibility that comes with our
Yes.
work.
Yes, exactly. And
Mhm.
particularly with what we do as public relations professionals, we should be leading the company in how we respond and work with the community.
Mhm.
So it's part of our role, or should be, if
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a great story, and that's a great example of how your vision really, and probably it's your storytell it's the natural storyteller inside of
Absolutely.
you that said,
Absolutely.
"Hey, I can do one better for you. Let's get this
Yes.
story told in a broader sense." And that's just,
Yes,
oh, that's
yes,
heart I love that. It's
yes,
heartwarming.
yes, yes. And so it was, I mean, that's just one of many. We do a lot of work with human trafficking, with domestic violence, things that actually move the needle in the community. The project we did with A21 domestic violence, human trafficking, it actually resulted in a huge increase in the number of calls into the hotline, and over 1,200 victims being found and helped in the state of Texas.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So, it that really is an example of moving the needle,
Mhm.
and being able to find these victims and make them into survivors.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. Well, Lee, the work that you do there is fantastic, and you've had such a successful career. What is one piece of advice before we go? What's one piece of advice you would give to someone coming into the space?
Well, the best advice you can give anyone is to be aware of what your surroundings are, where you fit into the organization, and where you can make a difference.
Hmm.
Always be aware of what's happening in the environment throughout your community or your particular swath of where you work and play and live, and to be aware that to look at things that you can make a difference in.
Hmm. Hmm.
Is there something that you can do that will make a difference, not only for you personally, which it should, but for your company and for the community?
Hmm.
It really is that corporate responsibility part of it. And everything else sort of falls into place from that. Earned media, all the other things fall into
Sure.
place if you're doing the right thing.
Hmm.
And always, in my mind, always be honest.
Yeah.
Always be honest with what you do and honest with media. I will tell you, my life at the Port Authority was a lot of media relations, and I have had a very good reputation with media because I always shot straight.
Hmm.
If I didn't know the answer, you'll find the answer, but you're never going to try to sell something that just wasn't right.
Right.
So listen to your own conscience and do the right thing, and be aware of what's going on around you.
Hmm. Oh, that's great. That's a great piece of advice. Lee, thank you so much for joining us on PRSay. I loved the interview, and I just applaud the work that you do
Thank you.
in there at Clear Channel. Good job.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You bet. All right, everybody, that wraps up this episode of PRSay. I hope you learned a lot from Lee. Make sure you connect. His contact information will be in the show notes. Public affairs is such an important part of what we do as PR professionals. I know not everybody's in this space. Some of us are in finance and oil and gas and nonprofits and education, but at the end of the day, we all have an opportunity to tell some great stories. So make sure you connect with your fellow PRSA members, especially here in the Houston chapter. So I'll go ahead and wrap up this episode, reminding you to hit subscribe. We don't want you to miss any episodes of PRSay. And if you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube, drop us some comments and we'll be sure to circle back. I'll end this episode by saying goodbye.